And we're live. All right. We promise she's not that drunk yet. It's just one of those days.
This is one of our friends that we apologize for. Everybody's got one of those.
We warn our friends before we meet the friend Nick. He's one of those. But we like him anyway. All right. So, hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passion and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. The podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. Without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Mr. Marvin Wynn, introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. It's Marvin Wynn coming to you live from Comicsburg, Pennsylvania. I am the writer and creator of The Edge, a comic book that we are going to be kickstarting starting in April. So, check us out at theedgecomic.com.
All right. And all of the links will be in the show notes as usual. So check those out, people. And the next part of the interview is how we first found them. And so I'll answer this for both of us. I actually first saw him when he was doing an interview on the Banff podcast about a year ago. And so he was our first comics book guy to come on for season 1. So with his Kickstarter coming out, I'm like, we've got to get him back to talk about all the new things he's doing. So here we are. And maybe Stock and I stalk him and like phantom like all of his art because it's amazing.
I do not phantom like it. I like it.
Oh, well, you do it incognito because you don't do it as you. You do it as your alter ego.
I do it as me.
Mm-hmm. I know about your stock pages. Like you're following some people. I know. I'm on to you.
No, I did not get that restraining order against Henry Cavill or him against me, however it may go.
I'm not saying her alter ego is Chuck Tingle, but I'm just saying some books have come out and I'm starting to have some questions, Doc.
You know what? Just because I told you where to put that tentacle doesn't mean that I'm Chuck Tingle.
Oh, we might be losing that family-friendly rating on this episode.
You started it.
I mean, but you brought the comic books guy on and you want to mention tentacles. Are you trying to give him a bad name?
No.
He doesn't draw those kind of comics. Wait, you don't, do you?
Those aren't comics. Those are mangas. Totally different medium.
This is where I smile and nod people.
That's what the mangas are doing. Are kicking American comics' butt right now.
You're going to be the man to fix it, though. I have faith.
I want to try it. Let's see what happens. I mean, we're trying to cross those lines. So we actually are going to be part of a book festival in August here in Pittsburgh, and it's the first of its kind here in Pittsburgh. And we are going to be selling our wares, talking to people about comics. So who knows, man? Anything can happen at those kind of events because now it's a brand new audience of people who probably haven't read a comic in 15, 20 years. So bring them back into the fold.
I think comics bled a lot of readers when they got political and both sides were doing it. And people were like, I just want to read a good story. And those people sort of got left behind. And now that the indie revolution has hit all spheres of creating, I think people are slowly starting to come back and realize, hey, we can have fun again.
Yeah,
and hopefully you find those people.
Well, and I think that's a lot of things are going in that stead. And it's not just the reemergence of indie, it's the breakup of Diamond. So now that Diamond is not a monopoly, now other books and other avenues are maybe made available for people to actually get at books, like your Kickstarters or your Indiegogos or crowdfunding. It's not just about stores anymore, really, too.
Yeah, because I mean, look at what happened with Sanderson. Sanderson's always been a big name, but $34+ million, and he's been doing a lot lately to help highlight all the other things that are going on in publishing on Kickstarter, which is great. I think it's wonderful medium to have people directly interact and say, "That's what I want. There's my money."
Right.
So.
All right, Doc, you got to ask him the religion questions. You got to say if he gets to stay.
He gets to stay. We like him. So
this is true, but we can't tell him that until he answers.
We're not going to ask you which one you like better, DC or Marvel, because I'm told that's not a fair question to ask.
Well, he's from Pennsylvania, so do we get to ask him Pats or Genos?
I have no idea what that even means.
Do you, Marvin?
I don't. We're in Western Pennsylvania. That's probably
I lived in Philly for a little bit.
There
It's
you go. There you go. That's
the
it.
cheesesteak, the two
All
large
I'm
grams.
hearing are places where it snows, and I'm going, yeah, no.
So here's so you brought up snow. So we have a winter storm advisory right now for tomorrow morning, but it's going to be 70 degrees tomorrow afternoon.
Wow.
That's some Missouri level shit right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I lived in Missouri, so frozen trees. It's like, I've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah, no, I loved how the ladies who were from Korea at basic training pronounced Missouri as misery. I thought it was a very apt statement for Fort Leonard Wood.
Right.
So, but two religions: Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly.
So we can pretty much eliminate Firefly from that right now.
But it's the only one that has like a hardcore comic following.
I know, but it's one of those things where it blew up really big, and then it died, and it's one of those things that I've always wanted to go.
Don't tell its fandom it died because they don't know yet.
Well, it died. I heard that Disney might bring it back, but it was one of those.
We're not going to talk about that.
It was something that blew up really big, and then it got like Fox killed it. So I've never watched an episode of Firefly. I tried watching the movie the other day, and I was in the middle of it, so I didn't finish it. So I may go back to that. But for me, I mean, it's always a toss up between Star Wars and Star Trek.
That's fair.
And Star Wars was the Jedi and the Millennium Falcon and Boba Fett and all that other good stuff. But to me, my favorite thing about Star Trek was Deep Space Nine, because it was an outlier of the other shows. So you really didn't have the protection of the Federation that you had on Next Generation or even Voyager for that part, because when they bought the marquee on board Voyager, they said, we're going to follow Federation rules, and if you don't like it, we'll put you on a shuttlecraft and shunt you out in the space somewhere or something. But Deep Space Nine had the best overall season with the Dominion War. That was some of the best television ever.
I have always been a hardcore Deep Space Nine fan. So,
yeah. And I like the Deep Space Nine because Cisco knocked Q on his ass, and that was one of the best scenes I've ever seen. And like he would come,
glorious because he just goes, "I'm not going to play your game your way." No.
He's like, I'm not Picard. I'm not going to play these games with you. Get off my station.
I thought that was great, and it was that moment watching those, because I was a teenager watching them, and teenagers are horrible to each other.
Yeah,
you know, and it was just that moment of, and that click. I don't have to play their game.
Yeah,
I don't have to interact with these people like that, and it was great role modeling of behavior. So I loved it. I also really liked it because it was probably, as an adult looking back, it's one of the ones with a healthier work-life balance in the show. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that we all could probably use a little better examples of.
And I mean, when you talk about the Dominion War, and then you're dealing with the Dominion occupying Cardassia, and the Kardashians finally feeling what the Bajorans felt after all that time when they occupied Bajor, and when Kira said it to the one guy, she said, so now you know how we felt. He just looks at her like, damn it.
Yep.
And then like my favorite villain is Gul Dukat. Like of mostly every show and movie, Gul Dukat was just a great villain.
He's so insanely Machiavellian. How can you not? You don't have to like him. In fact, you're not supposed to like him. Yeah. But mad props to him, and they had a phenomenal actor for it. Mm-hmm. So, and then I think also with Nog, I think we've all been that kid on the outside who just wants something that's totally different than everybody else around him. Mm-hmm. And Nog had to deal with that. He wanted to be in a Federation, in the Federation. He wanted to be in Starfleet, and everybody else was like, "You can't do that. Why would you do that?" And we've all had that point.
Yeah. Well, even Cisco said that to him. Like he didn't believe him that he wanted to do it. Like he thought it was just a con. He thought he was conning him.
I never really understood why and what that type of conversation meant until I was in the army and I knew people who unfortunately did go into the army in order to do some more nefarious things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, because I was just like, what? And looking back on it when I was watching it after my time in the army, I went, oh, that conversation makes so much more sense now to me.
And then the episode when he lost his leg, and then he didn't want to fight anymore. Like he was done, and he wanted to hide in the holodeck. It's just this, like it's just this. The characters on the show, the themes on the show it was just so good, and that's what
there were a lot of super deep themes to that show.
And it had the one thing that Next Generation didn't have was long form storytelling.
Yes,
Next Generation did not do that. It was end of the show, reset it, on to the next one.
If you're lucky, you might get like a 2 to 3 story arc episode, but an episode, a story arc that crossed over maybe a few episodes, but normally those were like the end of the season, beginning of the next season episode. Right. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I thought it was phenomenal. I loved it. Don't ever remake it. Whoever thinks that remaking it is a bad idea because it won't be right.
Right. And I think the only thing I would really look forward to, because I'm tired of that. Like I'm tired of the original Star Trek up to Next Generation as far as them doing shows about that. I want them to go 1,000 years into the future from the end of Deep Space Nine and do something different with like the Federation's in shambles. It's all falling apart. It's war, and they're on their own. There's like 2 or 3 other allies, and that's it. Everybody else is just for themselves. Or if they want to do something else, and I'd like to see a show about Worf. Worf deserves a show.
Well, dude, Worf's amazing.
From the Klingon side of things.
Worf's amazing. Yeah, that would be amazing. Or even just one where, like, you could even go forward a couple hundred years into the future and talk about what Bajor is doing and what's going on with, the wormhole aliens and stuff like that. That would all be awesome. I would love something like that. So stop rehashing old stories and destroying my nostalgia. Move forward.
Or another show with James T. Kirk. I'm like, all right, enough of this guy.
I'm going to say this, and somebody's going to want to take a hit out on me. He was my least favorite captain.
What did you think of the show Enterprise?
I enjoyed it until how in like when there's this law in a story, there's that old adage: send a couple guys with guns. In Star Trek, it's the Borg. So Enterprise was good, and then they decided our ratings are low, send in the Borg.
Yeah,
I felt like that was a thing on every show, except which one? Deep Space Nine.
Yep.
The Borg on Deep Space Nine. Voyager had the Borg. Yeah, Next Generation had the Borg. The new Star Trek shows have Borg. Like, no, enough of the Borg.
Fair. So if you're not, well, you're not watching on the side chat, dear listener, but I put in the chat, Babylon 5 was the best Trek ever. If you know, you know. And so Doc is threatening to kill me.
You will die in a warp core breach.
Yeah, those are the shenanigans we type on the side to each other while we're trying to be serious on the podcast.
I will say this one though, Jadzia Dax is part of why I got into science.
Really?
And it was really shameful the way what they did to the actress that played that character.
Yeah,
where she wanted to go do other things, and they just like, okay, get out of here. They just kicked her off the show.
They just killed her off instead of saying, well, we can make you a semi-reoccurring character instead.
Yeah. Like they did with Denise Crosby. Like they killed her off and then brought her back as her daughter.
Yeah, but I mean, I absolutely loved Jadzia Dax because she was a scientist, she was a warrior, and let's face it, she was hot. She could play with the boys, and then she could also wear heels and makeup.
Yep.
I can do the play with the boys, obviously, but I cannot do the heels and makeup. So, but she's
and the relationship with Worf felt authentic. Like when they tried to force Troy and Worf together on the show, it was awful because they didn't have any chemistry.
That didn't make any sense.
Troy was the worst character in any Star Trek franchise. I hated that. Oh,
I just never understood why she was always out of uniform.
Because she wasn't technically.
I still don't understand why she was the only one, not just out of uniform, but she was always the one with the cleavage.
Yeah.
Wait, she wasn't actually in Starfleet, was she? She was an advisor?
She was in Starfleet.
Yeah, she was a lieutenant commander in Starfleet.
I thought
See,
she was
I think
advisor.
maybe it goes to in the Army, medical corps is always wrong. Like if you're walking on post and somebody salutes and they salute wrong, they're probably medical corps.
I mean, her observations as an empath were just like, okay, I could have told you that, and I'm like, however old I was at the time. Like, you didn't need like rocket science superpowers to figure that out.
He's lying. Okay, we knew him.
Like, tell us something we didn't know. But all right, so now we get to go to the fantasy religion questions, Doc.
Well, we were having so much fun.
We were, but this is not the Star Trek hour. This is the Sell the Edge hour.
It is the Sell the Edge hour. So, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, or Wheel of Time.
So I'm going to go off the ranch again because I haven't watched any of those things.
He read the books.
Huh? I haven't read the books. I haven't watched the shows. I haven't watched the movies. None of it. I've seen a little bit of
You've been too busy making comics.
And what's that?
You've been too busy making comics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes and no. So if I'm going into a fantasy realm and it's something that I want to believe in and really get a handle on, it would be something like Crawl. I think Crawl was one of those best fantasy movies of its time, and it's something that shouldn't have died when it did. It's something that should be in comic book form. There's so much lore with the Beast, even before the Beast coming to Crawl. There's so much story there that needs to be told, and it's one of those things that when I think about, like, if I could get a license for something, what would I get? And my top two things is always Crawl or the Contra video game. There's just so much story you can tell with that stuff and it's just sitting there and no one cares about it. And it's losing its luster over the years, but it's something I revisit all the time as Crawl. So I would build something around Crawl and say that would be my fantasy thing that I would really enjoy to work with.
If we're going on ones that I felt like died too soon, did you watch the show Carnival Row about the urban fantasy kind of thing? Like,
yes.
I actually, when I watched the first season, because there hasn't been a season 2 and it doesn't look like it's going to get renewed, I started hoping it was based on a book so I could read it because I wanted more.
They did a book with it.
No, this came as purely a screenplay. There is no books in this universe.
No, the Carnival Row, that's the one with the elves.
Yeah, and the cop that was a fairy.
Yeah, there's an audiobook. It's a prequel to the show.
Okay, when I watched it and listened, I didn't find anything because I looked, and the Wikipedia page said it was based on a screenplay, and there was never anything else first. But that's a universe, for example, that's rich with lore that could be explored.
Right, and there was another one, Carnival, that show on HBO. Did you watch that?
I have not. Go on.
So it's a show about the light and the dark. So it takes place during the Dust Bowl era, and it's a traveling carnival. And so in the lore of the show, the light creates the dark, and the dark creates the light. So it's like if someone is the avatar of light and they have a child, they create the avatar of darkness, and then the other way around. So it stars Nick Stahl, and he's the avatar for light, and then avatar for darkness is a preacher. And it's so intertwined with so much stuff going on in the show. It's an amazing show. You have like one of the avatar of dark dies, and then he possesses people in the carnival. So there's a blind seer, and he possesses her to carry out his duties, and that's played by Adrienne Barbeau.
I'm gonna have to look this up. This sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was on HBO. It should probably still be on HBO. They had 2 seasons, and it got canceled.
Why is it all the good stuff gets canceled and then the crap they make season after season? I've not figured that out yet.
Because the good die young.
Well, I think it's somewhat of the thought process of the people who are the producers of the show, and the producers of the show, the person who created the show, or the person who like it was like on Seinfeld. Remember when they were doing their show, and a new showrunner came in and she said, "I'm not picking this up." That was that other guy's show. So new people come in, they're like, "I don't like this," and they get rid of it. It was something that's what happened with Futurama on Fox. Is the person who was running the showrunners for all the shows didn't like it, So they played it out of order, or they put it up against the NFL, and it would get preempted by the NFL, and you would miss episodes, and you didn't know what was going on, and then they canceled, and then it became. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, the Dresden Files showed that they did that actually too. They did not understand that it is not as how they did it was not as episodic as the people who were then selecting the air dates. So like they aired other things before they aired the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was. I've known several people who are like, if you go back and you watch it in the order that matches the books, it's a much better show. Because some of it's a very different style of storytelling.
Mm-hmm. And then we brought up Firefly before. That's what happened with Firefly. The same thing. Like the people on Fox didn't like it, so they preempted it for the NFL. Like NFL seems to be the what they use to crutch out a show. So if they don't like a show, they put it on at 7 p.m., guaranteeing that the NFL is going to run long, and then the shows you never want to see it.
And that is why, as a child and young adult, I hated football. I really did. I remember glaring at it and going, I hate football.
That's how they got. That's how Terra Nova died. The show that we both liked about the dinosaurs and time travel, and that's how Stargate Universe got killed, because back then everyone was DVRing everything. So on one, they couldn't track views with DVR. They didn't have a mechanism to know how many people were watching it. And then even if you did DVR it, you couldn't just say, I want to watch X show. It was X show on this channel at this time. And so if the football pushed it long, you got an hour of football for a game you didn't care about and not what you wanted to watch.
Yep.
I've never cared about
so
three-hour show with 13 minutes of action.
Yeah. So it was very frustrating. So I feel you there. But I feel like we're about to dive into your world, and we've spent so much time nerding out over other people's that we're just going to pause for a moment right now, where we're going to shamelessly shill for the man.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Comicsburg Population The Edge. I am Marvin Wynn, creator and writer of The Edge. We're going to take you on a journey featuring a drug that grants wonderful powers, yet at a high cost. The cost is your life, your sanity, or both. Welcome to The Edge. Find The Edge at theedgecomic.com.
All right, so thank you for sticking with us, and thank you, Marvin, for sponsoring this episode. And now, Doc, we're going to get nerdy with it, all right? So try to control yourself. But keep going, please. Question 6. Sorry, I had something in my throat.
I felt like you were trying to cue something else there, JR. This is why you have no game. So, what was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I would say sci-fi because I would say that like everything built up for me from G.I. Joe. And G.I. Joe is pretty much a sci-fi show. You've got red lasers, you've got blue lasers, you got tanks that blow up for no reason.
Snake eyes, you know.
Yeah. You got a ninja that doesn't talk.
And yet somehow communicates so clearly to everybody else.
So the one thing I hated, the one thing I never understood, looking back on it, have you ever noticed that they never hit anybody either? Like these battles going on and nobody's dying. It's just pew pew all over the place with nothing hitting anything except for random explosions.
Right. So, but that was going to be a thing. So if you remember when Transformers the movie came out, you had Autobots and Decepticons murdering each other. And it was something that you never seen on an animated show before. So before Robotech. Robotech and Voltron were my first introduction to animated death. Like it didn't happen in the other shows, but all of a sudden Roy Foker's dead. The original the pink line, blue. He was blue, died. And you're like, okay, so these people are dying. So then you get the Transformers the movie, and like these Decepticons are just blowing Autobots to bits.
Everybody dies.
Yeah, and it actually from the response from parents, So the response to their parents was that, why are you killing these things that these children love? So what ended up happening is once Transformers didn't make the money they thought it was going to make, G.I. Joe went from being a theater movie to just being on TV, and they changed the story because Duke was dead in that movie. Duke was dead.
Transformers specifically, I know one of the guys who helped write it and do it,
Mhm.
and he was also involved with G.I. Joe. Their entire aim was to kill as many as they could.
Yeah. Well, you're phasing out the old toys and bringing in the new stuff, so
Yes.
you have to eliminate the old ones. And if
Flint really likes to describe himself as the man who made an entire generation cry at once.
So if G.I. Joe would have come first, I'm pretty sure that Snake Eyes, Duke, and all those would be dead. They should have all been dead. Like when they were like the scene when they show up to the Cobra Law Palace and they're just getting their asses handed to them. They should all been dead. They captured them. They should have been dead right then.
Yeah,
So
the tactics in this, the tactics were a little bit non-existent. So
you dodged the bullet a little bit.
A little bit.
So
All right.
what did you want to speak, JR?
Are you going to let me today? That was so nice of you. But no, I was going to remind you, when you get old, you forget things. I didn't want you to forget what question you're on.
JR, I'm younger than you are.
Nobody knows that, though. All right, keep going
now. Brain damaged child. So, what was your first memory engaging in speculative fiction? Was it comics? Was it games or cartoons?
I want to say that my first reading experience when I was 6 years old, let's do a rewind. So when I was around 6 years old, my granddad had me read the dictionary. So I read the whole entire dictionary, and then we went over every word in the dictionary.
Wow.
The meanings of the words, the sentencing, different use of phrases. So it triggered something in me to use different things, to use different words for different things when I'm speaking. And then after that, my first book was Frankenstein.
Well, you had all the words for Frankenstein.
So did you read the full novel or did you read the Reader's Digest versions? That they were
The full novel.
Damn, that's some heavy reading, man.
Yeah. So what he did was he had a library in the living room, and he took me to this library and said, pick a book. And I had heard of Frankenstein because of like Lauren Hardy and things like that. I've heard of Frankenstein, and we always called the monster Frankenstein. And to that time, he's like, oh, is this about the guy from Lauren Hardy, the Frankenstein? And he goes, read the book. So I read the book, and I'm like, oh, so the monster doesn't have a name. He's not Frankenstein, even though for years, even cartoons and things, they say, oh, that's Frankenstein. That's Frankenstein. There's Frankenstein Jr. Like, no, he's not Frankenstein. So that, and then my next book after that was the Bible. I read the Bible. So
did you?
Go ahead.
Did your grandfather get to live to see you produce your first book with your whatever comic that was?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes. That's good.
That's
I imagine that
grandparenting right there.
Yeah, I imagine that was a moving moment for him then.
Yeah. So my grandfather was a poet. He actually wrote a poem about my comic.
Oh,
that's awesome.
Cool. Is that something you share or is that private?
So it's something that I'm going to have as part of the book soon. So I want to put some of the stuff that he wrote. So we actually have a character later on who is a poet, and some of those poems are going to be part of his thing he does. So instead of him having inner monologue, he'll have poems.
That's cool. Really neat.
That's amazing. All right. So what is it about speculative fiction that you love as the genre?
I just think that it's the goal and the feeling that you can go anywhere and you can do anything, and there's nothing closed off with these stories, and you can go to the moon, you can go to Mars, you can be on Earth, you could be underwater. It's just so much involved in it, and it's just so much fun to just be able to invent something from nothing. It's just like what I say. A lot of people is like, I just like having fun with stuff, and this is what's fun for me. So this is why I always want to do it.
Fun is a good answer.
Yeah.
So, how did your love of speculative fiction as a genre translate or transition into you writing stories? Because let's face it, I mean, for all comic books have pictures in them, they're still stories, and some of them are very epic stories.
So I was reading X-Men at the time, and I had heard about the Image thing, and they had ads in the book, and it was like, oh, the New Mutant Universe by Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee. And I was intrigued, like, what is this going to be? What is I thought it was still going to be with Marvel, and then it was this whole entire new this new studio and this new product and this brand new thing. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, man, to this time, like I knew about like Kamiko and Dark Horse and so many other publishers. You never knew that there was all you could do all this stuff on your own without a big corporation or a big studio backing you up. And these guys went out there and they just did their own thing. And I just piqued my interest and was like, man, maybe I can do this kind of stuff. So I started writing then as Image was starting out. That's when I got my first spark. I'm like, okay, let me see what I can do. And as I always say is that one day I'll actually show, and it could be on the what I was talking about before, the series from script to screen, where I talk about or even show some of my older scripts and just show how bad they were. and to show people that like with anything that you're doing, if you're doing art, if you're doing music, if you're a swimmer or a runner or you're a football player, you're not going to be perfect at it at start. And you have to, the one thing that you always have, you have to practice. And you have to learn, and you have to take classes on those things, or you have to learn from someone else, because it's not going to be perfect, and sometimes it's going to be really bad, and sometimes you don't ever want anybody to see it. But what you want to show is your progression from A to Z, and then it's going like I'm throwing some more letters to that alphabet, and we're going past Z, because you can't have limits, and you have to keep going. You have to push yourself, and you can't accept no. And you just have to know that it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up and you knock the dust off and you keep going.
That is solid advice in life, people. So take notes and play back and listen to it again if you need to, all you in the back. So many authors let their own real life experiences influence the stories they tell. So were there any specific formidable moments that you feel like shaped you as a storyteller? It sounds like your grandfather would be one of those.
Yes. So there's a lot of stories about my granddad. My granddad was not only a poet, he was a storyteller. And he used to tell us about how he was the superhero of his neighborhood. And he would tell us that when we would complain about carrying groceries up, he would say that, yeah, I carried 6, 7, 8 bags in my hands and I flipped up the steps. What are you guys complaining about? So it was that kind of thing. These are things that my granddad would say to us, just to motivate us, to say that, man, we can do this. We don't give up, or we keep trying. And that's one of the things that I've brought into my life and share with other people, is that we don't say quit. We don't say can't do this. We don't say it's hard, or we put our best effort forward. And if you fail, you get up and you try again. You can't ever accept failure. You can't ever accept second place, or sometimes even first place. Sometimes you want to go beyond first place, even though it might not exist, but you want to always do your best in those. And that's what he taught us, is that do your best at all times in those situations. And you'll feel better about yourself because you can't fail from trying. And one of the things they say is that you miss every shot you don't take. So it's those kind of things, and how he instilled that into us with his stories about him being this great hero that knocked out people with one punch. And then my grandfather was a boxer also. So just talking about how things shaped his life, and it might not have all been true, and it may have been just a little bit over the top, but that's what comics are. It's that stuff that's over the top, excitement and adventure. And you're getting into the lives of these characters, and sometimes they start to exist for real for you. And sometimes when you're writing the characters are telling you what should be happening. So it's a lot of things, and a lot of listening to people, and just forming ideas from the nether. You're just grabbing them out of the air and saying, this works, this works, this works. And sometimes things don't work for you. You put it aside, and maybe it'll work for you later.
That's, yeah.
No, that's
All right. You get to follow that, Doc, with the fandom questions.
I know. That's some awesome wisdom right there. And so now we're going to go into some fun wisdom, maybe. Have you had anybody cosplay or send you any great fan art of one of your characters yet?
So we've gotten fan art in the past. Right now, I get like when I send people books, they send me like postcards thanking me for creating this universe. And people when we go to conventions, people come up and they say, "Man, I can't believe that how good this book is," and I can't wait to get to the next issue. I've had people at conventions. They the guy bought issue 1, and he said that he went to get something to eat, and he read it while he was eating. He's like, "All right, where are the rest of them? Give me all the rest of what else you got." So I've sold 9 issues to people at one time at a show. I've sold 9 issues and got somebody to pre-order an action figure. So I'm hoping that the next convention I can get people on board for the Kickstarter. But I've had people come up and say that, "Man, I've been trying to meet you at these conventions. We always miss each other. I can't believe we're finally talking." So it's really exciting to me, and that gives me more fuel when somebody tells me that they're really enjoying the things that we're doing, and not only just like sending us fan art, but sharing our work with other people and then getting other people invested in it. So, I mean, it's a lot of fun when people are enjoying it and they're telling you how much it influences them or how much fun they're like. Walt was a big proponent of that. And when we first talked, and he said, "Oh man, it's this book. It was so much because I loved it so much." And man, it just piques my interest to do more work and say that, okay, this is going to be my fuel for the rest of the year. That this one person enjoyed the book.
Hey, you got to do it. And that's awesome. It's wonderful. So what was the first time, what was it like the first time somebody asked for your autograph? It happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, it happens at conventions, and it was the most recent one was the funniest one. Some guy, this was at a comic shop. So, we were at a comic shop and we were doing books, and one of the guys who worked there came up to me and said, "Okay, so I need you to sign 15 books." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Now, I'll give you the X amount of money." And I said, "I'm not charging you for my autograph. That's crass. I'm not doing it. I'm never going to do that." And so I signed them, and some guy came into the store, and he's like, he was actually talking about the book while I was sitting there. And he goes, "You got any more of the Edge?" And he goes, "Yeah, not only we have Edge, we got the guy who writes the book right over there." And the guy was like, "Oh my God." So it's just that kind of feeling you get when like someone enjoys your work and you're able to interact with them. And that's one of the best things about the internet is I'm able to interact with fans and customers. And I tell people all the time, like, feel free to reach out. I mean, my DMs are open. You want to send me a message and tell me how great I am, or you can tell me I suck. It's fine. I mean, I'm not going to get upset. I'm not one of those people that's going to block anybody for saying I suck. I mean, at least you read the book. You paid for it, right? You didn't steal it.
Yeah. So, that's hilarious. Have you had somebody like just randomly walk up and see somebody randomly reading your comic?
Oh yeah, I mean, you've had people.
Covers for comics are really distinctive. So
yeah. So I mean, it's. I mean, I don't think I've ever walked up on anybody reading the book per se. I mean, like you said, I walked up people talking about it when they didn't know. We don't. Our faces really aren't out unless you're watching like YouTube shows and things like that. You never see my face.
Yeah.
So when you're reading the book, and it was a situation like again at that same shop where some guy came in asking about it, and I told the guy, "Don't tell him who it is." And I walked up to him. I said, "Hey, you like the book, huh?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "So what about that Marvin Wynn guy? He's a pretty good writer." He goes, "Yeah, he is really good." And I said, "Well, he's me." So, and it's just the surprise you get on the people's faces when they're just like, "Oh my, it's
yeah."
You." Like I'm Stephen King or somebody like that. I'm just a guy that writes books, and I'm a personable person. So let's have a conversation. What do you want to talk about?
I think one of the neatest things, I had a friend once who is very social when he's at conventions, but in a day-to-day environment, not very social. And so he said that it's the best kind of famous because you go to a con and you get to be famous and people know who you are. But then when you go home, you get to be a normal person and hide.
Right.
And that's how we put it. And hide.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't have any paparazzi following you around, snapping pictures and going through your garbage. So, I mean, that's a plus.
Yeah, always a plus. Nobody wants to go through the garbage. Not really. So, would you say that was your weirdest or funniest fan interaction?
I would say, yeah. I mean, I think that the weirdest one was the guy. Like, he's been like, we've been missing each other at like 6 different conventions over the last 3 years. And he was just he wanted like, I want to just shake your hand, and then they wanted, and like we talked for like 45 minutes after that. And like every time he sees me now, he's like, "Oh yeah, hey, Marv." And it's and like he can call me Marv because mostly people who know me call me Marv. You never call me by my full name. But I mean, it's just that kind of stuff, and it's just like I said, it gives me fuel, and it makes me want to do better, write more stories, or do more with a character that someone likes, but not do too much because I don't want ever a character to become more famous than they need to be.
That's fair.
That's fair. So, speaking of your characters, this is where we talk about everything you have written and drawn. So, can you give us the Reader's Digest version of your body of work?
Sure. So, my current body is The Edge 1 through 16 is where we're at right now, with 4 one-shots. So, we've been working on this so long, we're so far ahead that it actually gave me the opportunity, because I'm actually writing 4 books right now at one time. So what's happening is that I start one thing, and then I get an idea, and then I jump to something else, and then I go back to the other thing, and then I get another idea, and I go to the other book. And it drives Mark crazy because I'm giving him like pages from one book, and then a couple of days later he'll get pages from something else. And he doesn't complain about it, but I know it drives him crazy because we're doing so much jumping around because the ideas are flowing. I just want to keep the momentum going. So I just finished writing issue 17, and like I said, that I'm working on those one shots that are actually pieced in between the arcs. Most of it is stuff that I had written before that was supposed to be part of those arcs, but didn't. It was like the story didn't flow with it in there, so I pulled it out and then made it its own thing.
So what is a one shot for people who aren't huge into the comic space?
Like me.
So a one shot is a one and done book. So it's a single issue. It stops at the end, and then you go on back to your numbered issue. So you're think of it like, sometimes in Marvel or DC they'll call it an annual. So something that comes out every year that is either starting or finishing the story as part of another story block.
Yeah, like one of my favorite, it really wasn't more of an anthology, but Louise McMaster-Bujold put it together almost as they were short stories that she'd written that were in between novels in the book series. And so she ended up piecing them into a novel, but it was like the character was getting interrogated, and it was like, well, let me tell you about what really happened with that.
Right.
And then was the short story. And so it's kind of like a one shot's almost like that. It's a tangential, self-contained. You don't have to know everything, but if you do know everything else going on, it's so much more meaningful, I'm sure.
Right. And I'm considering like gap books. So it's like what takes place in between that gap in the story, because the end of the story actually leads into the next issue. So it's like we're telling a story in issue 5, and we're like, okay, so this is happening. Now we're going to go back and tell you how that happened.
Okay.
So for those of us who are newbies like me, is there a place on your website that's like, by the way, here's the order, and this one shot goes here, and this one goes here?
Yeah. So once everything is released, we'll have that up on the website to say that if you want to get more of the story, read this before you read this. So yeah, that'll be there. And we do callbacks. If we need in the book itself, we do callbacks and say that, like you do, you'll have those little panels that'll say this happened in this issue.
Okay.
I like those because I'm such a completionist. I've learned that I will go through and read them all. And then if I find one, I'll go back.
Right.
So that makes this next question easier, because obviously then we're here to talk about The Edge. Where did you get the idea for this universe?
So what I say is that influenced by like X-Men and like the Image books. And I think that it kind of flowed together really strangely for me because the original when I was originally writing this, it really wasn't about the Edge, the drug itself. It was more about the strike team and their adventures and things they were going, and it was more in the line with a more straight ahead superhero book. But the longer it went, the more the Edge became the focus of the story. So we changed the title because the original title was Silent Strike, and we changed it to the Edge because it wasn't just about the team; it became about this whole entire universe of different people and how the Edge affects them. So I mean, and it actually came up because of, and it's something that is close to me and it was close to my grandparents is well, because they were diabetic and then I became diabetic. So it's the Edge is
Yeah,
like our yeah that our not struggle but our reliance on something that we have to put into ourselves to keep ourselves going. Pretty much, I don't want to say not to kill us or
well,
die, but
and you had like a 75% chance, unfortunately, since you had two of
yes,
developing diabetes.
yeah.
I know I have almost 100% chance. Thanks, Grandma.
But it's one of
Okay.
those things where it hit me. I was really I was in my year 30s when I got it. So and they were at advanced age when they got it too. So it wasn't something that I had from birth. I was predisposed and I didn't watch for the warning signs. That's all.
All right, that's part of the motivation I have to live healthier because it runs on both sides of my family
Yeah.
as well. My grandfather actually died from complications of the diabetes, so but we don't want to get too down and out.
That's boring. Let's talk about some more fun stuff.
We're gonna talk about some fun stuff. So I'm gonna put on the
I
screen,
want to see the
big
art.
screen for those of you get the full effect. This is the art that the art style that we have going on for the Edge. So what can you tell us about the what we're looking at, and then like sort of the art style you use? Because no, I mean you can tell from this is something Nick Garber taught us, who's our co-host in A Comic Guy, is every artist sort of has their own signature style that you can sort of read if you know it.
Yeah.
And so what are you going for with both the art style and then what are we looking at?
Well, this is a reminder that all the art is by Mark Louis. His last name is Vukonki. Yeah, he's from the Philippines, and we call him Mark V because I don't want to ever continuously pronounce his last name because I can't. And so the artist is by Mark, and then the colors are by a guy. His name is King Bola. He's one of the primary colors on the book. So, and they say that I would say that he's influenced by like a lot of 90s art styles, late 80s, Jim Lee. But he's got that distinctive Joe Malderia style. And it's really amazing that when you mix his style with the colors that we have, and everything just pops out. So here we have the strike team going up against our lead antagonist, Revenant. That is the guy getting his face burned off there. And then the reign of chaos. So the character in the bottom right is chaos, and then his team is the reign. So it's kind of a double meaning. So our second story arc is actually called the reign of chaos, which is like I said, double meaning. It's the reign of chaos, and then his team is the reign. So the reign of chaos. So and we
I
know
like
that
it.
Revenant's ability is to duplicate himself from a single drop of blood. So that's why there's two of them there getting the business.
So I, when I think of art, I'm used to thinking of all of it lock, stock, and barrel as one person. So, but with comics, the person that does the line drawings of the art and the person that adds the color are often not the same. So, how much of a difference do you think the actual colorist makes on the art style? I mean, is he just complimenting what the artist is drawn, or does he add his own flavor? Do you think he being the general, broad speaking, he?
Right. So I think each person adds their own unique flares to this. And when you get to the coloring stage, the colorist is going to be the one that's going to add not only depth but pop. So in something like this, when the artist is drawing it, he's not thinking about fading the background and making sure that all the characters in the foreground are popping out towards the reader. You're not really thinking about, well, how is the lighting going to affect of character if he has a green ball in front of his face? How is the lighting going to affect someone who has energy protruding from their hands, or if they have lightning flashing around them, or they have glowing swords? So it's a whole entire package together. And when their art is being done, and that colors can come in and complement everything that the artist put onto the page and make it even make it sing and make it a whole entire piece and that falls together. It's almost like magic. Because when you look at the pencils, you don't really see. You have an idea, but you don't see until the colorist puts those colors down, and depending on the colorist, it could be something really different each time they do it.
So is there a specific style that you try to keep with the edge for the art style?
Yeah, yes and no. But I like to say Mark is the primary artist, and he is so far the only one who has done interior page. We've had different people do covers, but Mark is pretty much our number one when it comes to interiors. We may bring in someone to do a few side things, but like in the main book, it's always going to be Mark.
Okay. I mean, I'm digging the art. So the next question is yours, Doc. Stop drooling over the pretty pictures. It's time to do your job.
I enjoy it. I am doing my job.
Drooling is not what we pay you for.
JR.
That's it. I'm cutting your pay in half. All right. You're docking your pay today.
JR, I make twice as much as you. That's okay. Your mother likes me better. So, moving on to the elevator pitch, what would be your 30-second pitch for? I know we normally say this novel, but what's your 30-second pitch for this Kickstarter?
Sure. So, the Edge is a drug that grants special abilities at the cost of either your life or your sanity. So, our lead character, Revenant, was a former assassin for the U.S. government who decides that he no longer wants to work for the government, so he's gone rogue. He is now out into the world with the secrets of the Edge. They send a strike team to either eliminate him or bring him back in. Chaos ensues, and we don't really tell anybody who the hero or the villain of the story is because everything's a shade of gray and everyone has their own motivations.
Okay. So what is it that you think of all the comics, because there are many comics, makes your series, The Edge, special and unique within the crowded field?
Because it's an independent voice, and we're not beholden to anyone else but ourselves as far as telling a story. We can go as deep as we want into mental health. We can go as deep as we want into drug use. We can go as deep as we want into being a fanatic. And we're not going to upset anyone. We're not going to cross lines of telling people what they can or cannot do or say about books. We just want to have fun and just generate and bring back the things that I loved about comics in the 90s was it was a lot of fun going on in the books and a lot of fun, a lot of energy. And it wasn't just trying to tell somebody how you feel about something.
So this is really, your entire thing is about the pure enjoyment of what makes comics great. And I think that's amazing. So what tropes do you think The Edge really kind of plays with? Because I know we've talked about it before, and I thought it was fascinating when you talked about some of the tropes of just how we look at mental health, but also how we look at medications and drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So and what else?
Like I said, we have a lot of that, and then we have the God's Thunder, and they're fanatics who hate anyone who has abilities. Doesn't matter what side they're on. They want to eliminate them all. So we're playing with a lot of surface level politics. We're playing with a lot of what happens when you go too far. So some of our characters go too far and they start to regret it because things progress so rapidly in this universe, and that your goal is that I want to bring all these people who special abilities together. We want to be able to be safe and not be attacked by other people who don't like us. But then again, I'm creating an army of people, and I have no control over what they do. And once I set them forth to do things, and I'm not telling them don't do this, and they start doing it, then I'm a victim too of their situation, and I'm also responsible for them. And then it falls to him, and he's like, "Holy crap, what have I done?"
Okay, so we've had you here before to talk about the Edge just in general when you were doing when you were rebranding and updating your story arcs and such. So, but now you're doing a Kickstarter. So, what is this Kickstarter? What is different about this? What are you doing with the Kickstarter?
So the Kickstarter is for the Volume 1 trade. So that's issues 1 through 4. Currently, the trade is 130 pages. So it's going to be issues 1 through 4, and then there's going to be some previews of what's coming in the future.
So it's like an omnibus then.
Somewhat, yes. So I mean, I would probably call it more of a long trade than an omnibus, because it's generally an omnibus is multiple story arcs. So it's maybe like 10 books possibly, and this is going to be 4 books and then extras.
Okay.
So it's going to be that. So we actually have we made a deal with Coffee on Comics out of Florida. So we're going to have an Edge blend of coffee as part of the Kickstarter. So you'll be able to get the Edge coffee. So you'll be able to read the Edge while you sip the Edge.
Ooh, I love coffee. We love coffee on this podcast, just to let you know. Now JR is going to grill you about what kind of coffee.
So what kind of roast did you use?
It's a medium.
Okay. And what kind of medium roast is it? Do you know, or is that top secret? And we got to find out.
So it's going to be one of those things where we want people to find out when they get the bag. So it's a trade secret.
Okay.
So we actually
surprise us.
Yeah. So we actually are going to do a second one. I think we're just going to call it Revenant, and it's going to be a special bean. So we didn't have enough time to get something special, so we're going to get something special for the Revenant one.
So is it going to be available for those who use like the K-Cup style?
I was going to say the Revenant could be decaf because decaf is evil.
This is true.
Yeah, these are going to be beans. They're beans. So Coffee on Comics actually they do beans, they do pre-ground, and they do K-Cups. So we're going to do the whole thing.
Okay. So what else is going on with this Kickstarter? Because in the pre-show you were telling us some of the big plans you had. So this would be a good time to tell us, because I want to be nerdy with all the things.
Sure. So as part of the Kickstarter, we are going to be giving away in one of the tiers 4 yearly subscriptions to Heroes Live TV. Heroes Live TV is a brand new streaming service that deals with independent comics, independent shows, independent everything encompassing comics, music, and other things. So as part of that, we're actually working on a series that will be on that channel called From Script to Screen, where I'm going to go over the whole entire gamut of what it takes to create a comic book, to publish a comic book, to market a comic book, and then get it in the stores. So it's going to be sort of like a documentary where I'm going to go over all the blood, sweat, and tears that people don't know about when making comics, and how much of a chore it is to spend 6 months to a year to make something that's 24 pages.
And you've got more. So when I get a novel, unless I've got a co-writer or I'm writing in someone else's universe, I come up with the idea, I sit down, I write it out, I have people, maybe do some checks for me, send it to an editor, it's ready to go with a cover. Yours is a lot more of a cooperative process than most, traditional authors have to deal with. So what's that, a little bit of your process like that? Obviously, we want people to go watch the documentary, so don't give all the trade secrets, but just maybe a hint.
Yeah. So the overall. So I mean, it's basically I sit at my desk and I try to come up with an idea. So what's happening at the beginning of the story? What's happening at the end of the story? What's happening with the characters? What kind of trouble am I getting into? What kind of obstacles are I putting in front of them? So then I script out. So generally, I am not scripting to a set page count. Like I go over 24 pages. Sometimes it's shorter. Sometimes it's 32 pages. Sometimes it's more than that. Then once I've got the script all ready to go, I do second checks. I send it out for people to look at and review. Then they come back to me with their ideas or if they think anything changed, I do my edits and then I send it to Mark for art. So Mark does the art. I generally let him run freelance if he needs to. So if there is a panel description that he thinks will work better, I let him change it. Art comes back. I review the art with the script again, and I check to make sure the dialogue can fit into the panels. So sometimes I add more or take out less some of the dialogue. So sometimes I have to rewrite some of the script because the dialogue doesn't fit in the boxes, and I have to pretty much try to figure out how to get the story that I want to tell if I have to start removing dialogue. So generally that works better with Mark because like we're on the same wavelength. So he's telling his story with just artwork while I'm telling the story with dialogue and words and panels and descriptions. Once we are square with that, it goes to the colorist with the script so that the colorist knows what they need to emphasize or not emphasize in the panel. After the colorist comes back, we do our next review with the script and the artist and with Mark to make sure that everything's working. It then goes to the letterer, who then does his checks. We get the proof back for the letters. We go over the script again, making sure that the dialogue works and there is anything that's flubbed or there's any misspellings. Once we get back to him, he does the finishes. Then we send to the printer.
So normally we would show you on the bottom of the screen, dear listener, what the link was for the Kickstarter, but this is not live yet. We're pre-recording this, so we are ready when he is. So in the show notes, you will have a link to the Kickstarter. So I encourage you to go check it out. He will have all of the tiers, all of the stretch goals spelled out for you there. So in the pre-show, you talked a little bit about you were looking at like action figures and some of the board games and such. So is that going to be part of this Kickstarter, or is that more plans for the future?
So the action figure is actually up. We did initial pre-orders first, and so it's up on our store. It's a G.I. Joe scale action figure of our character Blaine, the character in red on the left here in the image. We are working with Loose Collector. They recently did a Kickstarter for their own Mr. Hyde figure, but they also did Critter. They did Lady Death for Purgatory Comics, Brian Plato. They did the Purgatory character, Hell Witch, and a few other ones. So they're deep into the indie market of doing action figures right now. So this is their first 3-inch figure. I don't know if we're going to do any more 3 inches. I think that since most of the market has moved on to 6-inch, I think we're going to move up to the 6-inch figures after this one and then continue from there with all the other characters. So we've talked about doing the board game before. It's one of those things that it starts and it stops. We do have a few people involved in that. Our good buddy Walt has been working on that for a while now. So hopefully we'll get that out soon. But I mean, we're just trying to cross markets. So we're looking at people who read comics will play games. People who read comics will buy action figures, and then get those people from those other markets into the comic. So in each one of these situations, we're going to have a comic book ready to go as part of this thing. So an action figure is going to come with a comic. The games and everything else will come with comics also.
Okay.
So a card game would probably work really well too, though.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we're going to test the whole entire thing.
There's all different kinds of gaming. Yeah. If you need somebody for gaming, I play board game.
No, let's not lie. You don't have any friends to play with.
Shut up! That's why I bought a Switch. I can play it on the Switch.
So when you talked about games, like, people think board games like, along the lines of like a Monopoly or something like Risk or whatever. Are you looking at like role-playing games? Because I know a certain Walt, who we're all friends of, Doc calls him Grandpa Walt.
Grandpa Walt's amazing.
Yeah.
He actually has a system designed for superheroes, and it's almost like you could plug and play with your characters if someone wanted to gamify this.
Right. Like I said, that we've been talking about it for a while, and hopefully soon we'll be able to get that completed and get that out. So so we're working with Walt on that also. So he's the man. Okay. So we're going to work with the man.
So here's.
Go ahead, Doc.
I was going to ask my favorite question about back alleys.
So real quick, while we're still thinking about the the action figures, are those more designed for like a collectible market, or are you designing those with the intention of like people having their kids play with your characters, like we used to back in the day when we brutalized GI Joes?
So, and it's funny that you say that, and I'm going to go on a tangent real quick. So we actually were talking about that on another show I was on last week about how collectibles have destroyed the action figure market. So people don't buy toys to play with them; they buy them to collect them. And one of the guys was talking about that he bought his son a Spider-Man comic book, and the first thing his son asked him, "How much is it worth?" And I think that's not a good thing. I don't think. I think that toys should be played with. And these toys are being designed for both the collector and someone who wants to play with it. So I will encourage you to take the figure out of its package and beat the hell out of it, because that's what I used to do. I used to take my GI Joes in the backyard, and we used to torture them. We used to we used to bury them in the dirt and dig them up, and they'd be all scratched up and dirty, and that's what they were for.
That's what I did with my GI Joes.
But if you have to also remember that back then those figures were $3. That same figure now is $20. So I think that with the market, the pricing in the market changed the way that people view these things as not being something that a toy to play with, but as a collectible. So it's going to be a little pricey because it's an independent market, but we want you to play with it. So we'll figure something out as far as that. So maybe we did Legos, little mini Legos too, and those are all gone. So I have one left that is mine, and no one else can have it. But we did the Legos, and maybe we'll do more Legos, and those will be like $10, and we can get those in people's hands and say, "Here, play with this and do what the hell you want with it." Besides a $30 figure that you don't want to take out the box and play with it.
See, I let my son take everything out of the box, but he also likes to make stop motion videos with them.
Yes. See, I mean, that's still playing with it. You're not putting.
Granted,
like I said,
I did tell him he couldn't take his like super fancy VMAX holographic foil card to school to give to a friend. I'm like, no. Put your Pokemon card back.
Yep. So I don't want action figures to turn into knickknacks to go into grandma's cabinet that you're not allowed to touch.
That's what they pretty much become, sadly.
Yeah.
But so you've mentioned right now that you've got 18 issues out, and you've got 4 more you're writing right now. So is there a definite endpoint of this this universe that you've got planned out? Are you going to just keep the universe going and the characters interchange as the life cycles as they do? Like, what's your plan for the larger universe?
So
what are people buying into?
When I was originally writing this story, I did have an end in mind. And we started having so much fun with it that we decided to keep it going. So one of the stories we deal with the mystic character, that's the character with the swords, is that other people have held those swords in the past, and they're somewhat influencing him through the swords. So we liken it more to the Black Panther afterlife, where all the Black Panthers are there to give you advice and things like that. They're giving him advice, but they're kind of pushing their advice on him. So that's what one of the stories is going to be about. So this allows us to a little bit play more in the fantasy realm instead of sci-fi, because once we tell people who originally held these swords, they'll be like, "Oh, we're going there." Huh? I'm like, "Yeah, we're going there. We're going all the way there." Yes.
So JR skipped ahead, and I didn't get to ask my favorite question.
Mm-hmm.
No, this was the ad hoc point. So you're good.
No, that question is, where do you see the series going next? Is there more? Is further along?
Oh, I forgot that one. You hush. I'm still right. I'm still right. I don't care.
Hi, he's JR. He can't count. So if your characters met you in a dark alley and they knew who you were, how do you think you'd fare on that one?
I'd be eliminated. So issue number 2 and issue number 5, we take the character Bolt, the character in the middle left there. We take him through the ringer. Just as a little hint, we take his powers away from him, and then put him into a position to get it, to do something to get his powers back. That's going to not only affect him, but the rest of the team. So he wouldn't like me very much for what I'm about to do to him, and I'm going to do. So what I say is that I put the characters through the grinder, and we do it to all of them, and we're going to see how they come out on the other end. All of them are not going to come out of it unscathed, and it may make a couple of them quit.
I really hate it when all the characters are always like they go through hell and they're just fine, and that's not really how it works.
It's not even going to be even close.
So I look forward to that, and that makes me feel like I'm a mean human being for saying it, but I'm okay with being mean.
Right. So you'll start to notice the physical changes in the Bolt character as it goes along, as he changes, like, because he's the youngest on the team. As he not only as he becomes more of an adult, but as he changes, as he's hiding something from the team, and it's not going to go well when they find out. It's not going to go well for him or them or anyone else that's around him when it happens.
Isn't that how it normally happens when you keep a secret and it comes out?
Yeah.
Just saying.
So don't keep secrets from your team. It's not going to work.
No, JR tried to keep that. He can't count secret, but we figured it out.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the zombie movies. There's always that guy that gets bit and doesn't tell anybody.
Yeah. They always get found out eventually. So is there any, you mentioned some people might want to quit. Is there, like, if they stop taking the drugs, do they pause the effects? Can they walk it backwards? Or once the changes happen, is it permanent?
So most of the characters are unaware that they've been dosed.
Oh, wow.
That's dark. Yes. So they are unaware of the consequences of these abilities. Which is why, as I said before, why they don't want Revenant's secrets to be known. He knows, but he's not telling anybody because he's a jerk.
So I imagine that reveal is gonna ruffle some feathers in this universe.
Yes, very much. Because the person that leads the team knows, and he's not telling them. And then we'll get into why he's not going to tell them also.
That will be interesting reading.
That is a pretty hefty twist right there, man.
So remember what I said about that he formed a strike team to go after Revenant.
Right. Is that something you've already written, or is that in the future?
That's something that's going to come down the line. I mean, we hint at it a few times, and you think you look at the characters and you're going to like, so why are they not mentioning that if it happened right in front of their face and they're not even saying anything? So there's other things going on there that. So why does that character see this thing and they never talk about it? I wonder why. We shall see.
Okay. So have you ever, when you were writing these, given yourself twists that you surprised yourself even? And obviously you're going to have to vague book this one because we don't want spoilers, but have you ever been writing and like, ooh, that's dark and twisted. Didn't see that coming.
So it happened with the Mystic, when I was talking about with the Mystic character, that happened because it actually happened because Mark, he made a comment about, we were talking about something else. And he said, what if we did this? And I'm like, holy crap. I wrote that into the story and didn't play on it. And now I didn't play on it. So it was something that was there, and I didn't really recognize it was there until he mentioned it.
Yeah, I'm always surprised at the unintentional things people pick up on. So like the secondary characters with the author was like, literally they were there for stage direction to turn the plot a different direction. They were like inconsequential, and those characters resonate with people, and you're like, then you got to grab the tiger by the tail and try to hold on and rope that character in. Right. It's sort of amazing.
That's what happened with Revenant. He became popular. People love the Revenant character, and I'm like, man, I don't really want you to like this guy. He's a jerk. But then
happens. That happens in real life too, with real people sometimes.
Right. It's. I almost look at it like the Gambit, Deadpool, and Harley Quinn effect. So these are characters you're not supposed to like, and people start to like them. So what do? They want to put them in everything, but then the character becomes overblown, and you're like, all right, I'm sick of them now. So I have to almost do the opposite with the character of, instead of pushing him out more, I have to pull him in and then use him sparingly. So we are going to give him a one shot. And in this one shot, he's telling his story out of order. So he's telling like the end, the beginning, the middle, and all of it's jumbled up because his head is all jumbled up, and he's lying about things. So he's actually telling the story to one of his clones, and the clone pretty much comes out and calls him out and says, "Dude, what are you talking about? That never happened. I was there. What is this?" He goes, and Revenant just says, "It sounds cool, so I'm going to tell it to people."
Wow. I like that though. That's kind of deep. So, have you
That
ever
sounds
noticed? And
quite
this,
fun.
I've noticed with just with the fiction in general, and I don't know if this translates over to the comic book world, but you try to write a villain,
Mhm.
and the trope is everybody's a hero in their own story. So you try to write villains that are relatable but still make them evil, and you do too good at the relatable part and not good enough at the evil part, and so you have people rooting for the bad guys. Some of it, I'm sure, is just nihilism. But
Right.
do you see that in the comic books? Like, I mean, how many people are jokingly Team Vader, right? Like, and
Yeah.
Darth Vader's supposed to be the bad guy.
I see that
and I think that it's one of those things where someone would say that Joker and Harley Quinn is a relationship goal.
Yeah, for abuse.
Yeah. I mean, it was something that was happening during what was the latest movie they were in together? Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
And people were saying that, man, I wish I had somebody like Joker. I'm like, what in the world? He electrocuted her in that movie. So, and it's like they have like Valentine's Day's cards with Joker and Harley Quinn. I'm like, what's going on? What's going on in our minds that people think this is a good thing? And that's one of those, like I said, with the Harley Quinn character, is they separated her from Joker, and they gave Joker a new girlfriend, and then now Harley Quinn is a member of the Batman family. I'm like, what? I don't know what. And then the same thing with X-Men. Like Juggernaut is an X-Man. I'm like, what? No. And I don't do that with Revenant. I don't try to make anything he does look like it's a good thing. But when you're playing in those shades of gray, and we're not really saying he's a villain, we're continuously showing him doing villainous things. But then we do that with the other characters too, because like I said, the whole entire book is about how do I survive this? And sometimes when you're trying to survive, you do things that aren't above board. And sometimes you get away with it, and sometimes you get caught. And Revenant always gets caught because he doesn't care that anyone knows he does these things. So one of the things that he does in his one shot is he just kills people for no reason. Like we have a panel of him sitting he's like sitting in a transport plane, and he's sharpening his knife, saying that's not sharp enough, with a pool of blood under his feet. Because he just killed some people because he felt like it.
He had to test the sharpness of the blade. I mean,
it wasn't sharp enough because he was just still sharpening it after he had killed all these people. So
I mean, I guess
sorry.
I was to say that's a little dark.
Yeah. I mean, but that's it, is that we want to play in those areas of this character, because he's not a good dude at all about anything. Like he just kills because it's like it jacks him off, I guess. I don't know.
So do you think that, given your art style is so bright and colorful and it pops so much going to those dark themes, did you ever consider going grayscale?
I think what we usually do is we darken those pages. So you'll see, like in issue 2, when we're doing over a little bit of Bolt's origin, we do those things a little darker, a little bit more not on the nose, but trying to get those emotions out of you as we try to explain who this character is and where his powers came from, and how he's just sitting on a lot of anger. But he's a teenager, he's a young guy, and he's been through a lot in his years, and he hasn't been able to fully express those things because he's a team of, not saying more of adults, but people with other special abilities. He doesn't want to look like the weak link.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the universe and the drugs and how they affect you. Was there anything else about the universe that you think people need to know to understand these stories, or have we covered it?
So the rain characters, and we're going to talk about the character in pink on the bottom left here, Vault. So firstly, all the characters who are official members of the Rain are named after fallen angels. So we've got Azael, we've got Vol, we've got Celios, and Rahab. So the Vol character, her costume is a living dormant creature. So
Ooh.
we've got these things going on that, like, we'll talk about it later. But her costume is very unique in that it's a creature that's it's living, but it's in a dormant status right now.
That's okay. All right. That is not what I expected you to say. Have you figured out? I mean, obviously you can't tell us because no spoilers. But
Yep.
do you know what the creature is going to become?
Yes. And I'll just say right now that there are similar things going on with the other members of the ring. Hers is just more outward because we wanted to give her that the unique look on her costume. So we were talking and we said, yeah, so it's this thing here is her costume, and cool, let's go.
So do you throw a lot of capes in there? Because I don't really see any here, but people think capes when they think superheroes iconically.
So we do have a character that will be showing up. Like I was saying before, is that whenever I try to seem like I'm trying to write something that's not the Edge, it becomes the Edge. So we have a character called Sigma, who is he is pretty much our Superman archetype, but he has PTSD and he refuses to fight. So he's been a
Interesting.
superhero for 45 years, and he can no longer ball his fist up. He can't do it anymore. He's been in too many battles. He saved the universe. He saved the Earth. He's defeated the villains. He's done what he needed to do with the villains, and now he's done. He doesn't want to put the costume on. He doesn't want to fight. He's just sick of it. He doesn't want the blood on his hands anymore.
Okay, that would be an interesting. Is he going to get a one shot?
That's still in the planning stages, and we're still in the planning stages of how we're going to introduce. We have an idea of how we want to introduce the character, but it's going to be a really slow burn with that character because of the situation that we put him in. I want it to go very slowly as we slowly introduce him, and then to show why he's the way he is.
Okay, so we know every literary universe has their own consistent rules of science, technology, and magic. Well, the good ones anyway. And the ones that aren't consistent, the readers or reviewers always tell you, no, that's not possible because blah 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 blah. Like they could tell you universe. Doc, be nice.
But
so what sort of tech and or magical abilities can we expect in this universe?
So we and it'll be kind of a like I'm going to go as far as I can. So we actually go back to the stages of magic and say magic doesn't exist. It's the Edge.
Okay, that is neat. Doc, it's one of your favorite questions. You get all the good ones.
I do. It's because I am meaner than you. So, of everything in your universe, what would you say this is what I'm going to take and I'm going to have it be real, at least for me?
Wow, that's a good one.
Yeah, we like to stump our authors.
I don't want the Edge to be real because it's not a good thing. It's bad. So I would maybe the swords, because like I say, that the swords have a lot of history, and once we show the people who have wielded them before, so we've got like knights, we've got pirates, we've got sword ladies, we've got a lot of things going on there that is going to like open this can up, and it's going to lead down a whole different path for the mystic character as we whip him into shape, because you see that. In his original costume, he's wearing armor, like I'm a knight, and then he turns into more like of a samurai ninja type character, and then it just progresses from there as he is. I don't want to say he's possessed by these swords, but they're certainly influencing his demeanor and the way that he wants to present himself. So I think the swords would be where I would say.
So my next question is typically, how would you abuse that if you had it for daily use? Like, what would you do with those swords?
So we've got these swords that are unbreakable, that don't chip when they hit something. They can cut through almost anything, and they can shoot energy blast. They do a lot with that.
Yeah.
And we haven't really even explored everything these swords can do, because he doesn't know. So until the character knows, like the reader doesn't know what these things can do. So I mean, it can have other abilities that we're not even aware of yet. So I don't know. I mean, those swords could be pretty useful tools in the real world.
I'm reminded of that scene. I'm reminded of that scene on Armageddon where they're about to go up and land on the asteroid, and they ask them what they want from the president, and the guy just looks at him and goes, "I'm never paying taxes again." I can imagine that's what I would do with that sword.
Yeah. Like that, and they don't want to ever pay taxes.
Yeah. All right, Doc. You get to ask him about the aliens and fantastical creatures if you're brave enough.
Like we know I am. Okay. So you've already told us that there's one really amazing creature, but are there more fantastical or alien creatures in your universe?
Yes. So we have, and I'm going to go back to our Deep Space Nine thing. So if you remember the Jem'Hadar.
Yeah.
So we have similar type creatures we call them M's. So that's another biblical reference if people want to look that up. And they are foot soldiers for a group. I'm not going to say who they are right now, but they are who they send when things get like kind of out of hand. So like I said before, that we're going to go backwards in time and show more of the fantasy stuff. And these are who comes when they want to put something down. So if something's becoming more than it needs to be, or there's a revolution of some kind, they come and put them down. So they work in kind of stages. So you've got your regular foot soldiers, and then if they survive, they get elevated and up and get more weapons. So then I think there's 4 stages you can become to become an elite. So if they survive a mission, they get elevated into status. And it's like the Jem'Hadar, they're bred for combat.
So did you use, you said it was a biblical reference. Did you use that to kind of guide how these creatures are and how they look? Mm-hmm. Or was it more Star Trek driven, or what?
I think a little bit of both. I think you'll see like there's a little bit of Jem'Hadar reference in their design, and a little bit in the way their facial things. But I mean, it's like we just grab a lot of stuff. So we use like I said, the M's were like, I would like people to go and read it and figure out what they are.
That is a fair answer. That is a very fair answer, sir.
I want people to look things up and say, "Oh, that's why he did that." Yeah. So M's.
Encouraging education is always a good thing.
Yes. Do some research.
So you mentioned you were inspired biblically in some of your creature creation. So are we going to see organizations like the Illuminati, which people associate with that, even though maybe they shouldn't?
So that's where our buddies God's Thunder. So that's GODS apostrophe. I mean, the apostrophe comes into play. They are. Man, it's so hard to talk without spoiling things.
Well, then you can just say, "Hey, this is a spoiler. I'm not going to give it to you."
So they know what's going on. They know about the Edge for some reason. I'm not going to say how, but they get involved into the story, and they have their own agents of ripping and tearing things up.
Okay. All right, so they're going to have to read all the things to know all the answers. And if you do get some conspiracy theories, dear listener, once you read all of his things and you want to discuss it when we post this live, I'm sure he will like to laugh and not answer you because he doesn't want anyone else not to read it. But you could always message him directly as well, because he does have his contacts in the show notes. So, Doc, before we wrap this up, did you have anything else to ask him about this glorious artwork in the comic?
No, I really enjoy it.
Okay. So, what about you, Marvin? Was there anything that you wanted to tell us that we didn't ask before we wrap this up?
No, I think we talked a lot, and I mean, I just want people to get out here, and I mean, not just this book, but the indie comic book market is an amazing thing right now, and you've got every genre being covered. I mean, we know that Marvel and DC have done the superheroes a lot, but people are doing superhero and they're doing things differently, and they're doing things the way they want to do them, and there's no one over their shoulder telling them, hey, you can't do that.
So what would be a good way for our fans to encourage the indie market? Not just with, I mean, obviously backing your Kickstarter is a great start, but is it going and harassing their local comic book store and going, hey, look, these are really amazing, you need to carry them? What's like the next way for them to help get that?
So I think it's a kind of a multi-pronged attack. So we actually, like I said, I was actually talking about this before. I would challenge everyone to take a child, anyone under the age of 13, and take them to a comic shop and introduce them to these books, and then tell the comic store owner, you need to order X indie book and you get these, and not order so many of these Marvel DC books, because what's happening right now is that the entire comic market is basically people over the age of 30. And
I have noticed that.
You have to reinvigorate the market, and you have to get new people into this market. I don't care how you do it. If they like Fortnite, there are comic books about Fortnite. There's toys about Fortnite. Get them involved in these amazing stories and get people reading again, because I don't like the idea of this continuously.
So my son, actually, my oldest actually reads, but he reads manga. And I asked him why he didn't read comics, and he said, because Americans tell stupid stories in comic books, like talking about Marvel and DC, which is what people think of when they think comics.
Exactly.
So it's one of those perceptions you're going to have to change.
Right, and that's the one thing that we're trying to break up, and that's saying is that's what we're doing this book festival. We want to try to capture those people who used to read comic books a long time ago and fell out of them because the stories you're pretty much repeating the same stories over and over again, and the characters never grow, or they never grow up, they never progress. It's always the same thing.
I think that's one of the things that I always kind of like bothered me about comics is they're like, oh look, Peter Parker never gets, just as an example, Peter Parker never gets really much past like 25.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, we're going to reboot the character. I'm like, just stop rebooting the character and just complete the freaking character.
Right. I think one of the worst things they did to Peter Parker was to break up that marriage. I think that kind of took the character backwards. I mean, the character, you have to progress the character. I mean, just like Superman.
Marvel and DC seem to do this with all of them. They're like, oh, well, we'll just reintroduce and redo this character. And like,
I have suspicions on why they do that.
One, they do it because it works and it sells and people go out and buy it.
But it doesn't.
It's easier to tweak or do this new spin on an already standing character than to create a new character.
Well, part of it is they're marketing on nostalgia. I would say, at least with regards to comics, it doesn't work because their sales are going through the floor. That's why they've been saying the end is nigh for comic books for about the last 10 years, probably, maybe sooner. I don't know. But I think the other part of that is just an IP thing. If they hire you to write another, I will call them Spider-Man story, you're writing in their IP, they own all of it. Now, if they hire you to write another superhero and you create the next big thing, then they owe you more royalties and they don't want to split the profits. So it's about the IP holder trying to keep the purse strings, that fiscal profit loop close to them.
Right.
They don't want to share.
And the other thing you don't want to do is you don't want another image. You don't want another image revolution. You don't want your top talent to leave and create their own thing. So that's why that you keep artists or writers and artists moving through different books. So then they can't get a foothold and do this in the whole entire 200 issue run. And then they're like, oh, I'm famous now, so let me just skate over.
Yeah. So speaking of, Doc asked about and you mentioned local comic book stores. Before we let you go, can you tell, like, where all can people buy your stuff? How do they acquire indie comics?
So our books are available in local comic shops. We are starting more of a more direct to store thing. You can get the books online on our website. So that's theedgetocomic.com, which is currently pointing at our Kickstarter page. So if you are looking to get anything before the Kickstarter, we do have a SWID page. So it's theedgecomic.swid.com. So up on the store right now, I've got issue 1, 2, 3, and 4 in stock. The Kickstarter will have different covers, and we actually have a hollow foil and a silver foil upgrade to some of the covers also.
Oh, neat.
So when I say that comic shops, we need to save comic shops also, because just this past couple weeks, 3 comic stores closed, and a local shop here is no longer doing new books except for our stuff.
Wow.
That's sad.
Yeah, they don't want it. They like the diamond thing is not working out for them. Ordering Marvel, DC, and whatever, no one's interested. So this is why I say I challenge you to take these children to these stores, get them interested in these books, and it's fine if they want manga. That's fine. That manga helps the store too, but try to introduce them more into more indie books instead of the 60-year-old history or almost 70-year-old history of Spider-Man, where they reference things back then. And you're like, all right, who is this crazy looking guy with the purple hat, and why does he hate Spider-Man?
What I also love is really on anything with kids is if it gets them reading, that's a win.
Yes.
So I'm very simple. Like I've had this argument with my mom and with other people, and I'm like, I don't care. He's reading. Leave him alone. Now I do make him, like, when he wants extra time on the Switch or something, and I'm like, go read an approved chapter book.
Yeah.
But that's earning it.
The only problem with reading in comics scenario, like especially like manga, it's like $5 for a book that they can read in like 15 minutes, and then it's like, I want the next one. I'm sorry, kid, I'm not made of money. so at least with chapter books, it slows them down a little bit.
But my kids read like Dogman, like each one of those 6 times.
Fair.
And the wings of fire, like 10.
So before we let you go, dear listener, we'd like to remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. Speaking of reviews, are there places when they buy these comics that they can leave reviews? Because if they're buying them in comic shops, there's obviously not a review platform on that comic shop. So where do they go to review your comics?
That's a good question. So I think there's a few places. I can send you some links of stuff, and you can drop it in there where people have reviewed our books, and it's open for like people to come in and do reviews. That's another issue with the indie market, is that there isn't one place to go to find out about indie books. You can go to all these sites and find out about what's going on with Marvel, DC, and Image, but there isn't one-stop shop for indie. And hopefully, in the next couple months, that's something we're going to change, because we're going to try to do this whole entire indie summit thing and bring everybody together and talk about that kind of stuff. Where you guys
need something like Goodreads, but for comics.
Yeah. So that's the one thing we want to talk about and try to get these things figured out. So that's right. What I'm doing right now too is I'm contacting store owners, I'm contacting creators, and we're going to get this indie summit thing together. We want to do it virtually first, and then maybe in the future do something at like a convention or something like that. So I'm thrown, like I said, that I'm walking down all these paths and trying to reinvigorate the comics and try to get people back into these shops. I know a lot of people left because of this thing or that thing, but it's a different market now, and you've got way more variety than you did in the past.
That is fair. And so if you want to create the website that review all the things, or the YouTube channel, or the BitChute, or wherever people are going to do those things, and you want to do that as a passion because you love these comics so well, I imagine that you could reach out to Marvin, and he could put you in contact with a lot more creators, and you can expand your reach, because that's where yin meets yang and magic can happen. Mm-hmm. So real quick, before we get everyone to tell everyone where they can reach you, family-friendly rating on your comics for parents listening, because we've got a lot of families that listen with kids that to the podcast. What would you rate the comics?
So the comic book is rated. It's actually on the book. It's PG-13, so it's no different than a Marvel or DC movie. We block out the swears. We may say "damn" or something like that before. We don't go over the top with the violence. You see a guy getting his head all melted out, but we're not showing his head exploding and brains going everywhere. So, we keep it PG-13.
That's fair. All right. So where can our listeners and viewers find you on the interwebs?
So the website is theedgecomic.com, which I said is currently pointing at our Kickstarter. But you can find me on Twitter at Marvin Wynn, on Facebook, The Edge Comic, and on Instagram at The Edge Comic.
And as usual, dear listener, those will be in the show notes. You can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show. /Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email the show at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, that is blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. We actually respond to those. Well, Doc does, because she's got to earn that paycheck. We have a Facebook group where all the shenanigans happen, which is
It would help
Facebook.com.
if you could write sentences.
I does the words. We have a Facebook group where all the shenanigans happen at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades podcast. Be sure to hop in there and join the discussion and start one yourself and talk about all the nerdy things. If it's spec fic and fan related, we want to talk about it.
Talk nerdy to me.
Talk nerdy to us. We should get the t-shirt and write that. Someone's probably already done it though. But so we have our website, which is anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades, where you can support us, the show, for as little as 99 cents a month. Help keep the lights on. Again, that's anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. Or you can support the show over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts Doc Cisca and Nick Garber duly intoxicated. They will drink until their liver surrenders.
Never surrender. My glass is broken, JR. I told you to fix this.
We got to get people to donate a little bit more money to get you another thing, or get that meat company to sponsor us. Speaking of sponsorships, thank you for making this show happen today, Mr. Wynn. And because we haven't done it yet, and it's too late to kick you off, so you dodged a bullet. How do you feel about pineapples on pizza?
I used to eat Hawaiian pizza all the time.
Oh my God, never coming back, Doc. Close the show out.
He is so coming back. Maybe next time we'll even get Nick to join us, or we'll order pizza.
We'll just do a whole stream where they just eat Hawaiian pizza while they torture me.
Yes, JR. Yes.
Put up to the camera. It's got pineapples on it.
All right, Doc, bring us home.
Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. This is Blasters and Blades podcast. Occasionally we allow Nick on. We seem to have a lot of JR. I don't get that. But I enjoy your time. I hope to hear from you guys soon. Next week we'll be back, same time, same place, indulging our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, all things that go boom, and of course, torturing JR because it's the best entertainment.